famous last words. 2 weeks turned into, well, in some anti-science states like California, 1 year and 3 months before they finally allowed bars, restaurants, and gyms to partially reopen. Even to this day, California still has draconian restrictions like vaccine requirements to sit in a restaurant and indoor mask mandates. Study after study has debunked the efficacy of lockdowns. Some notable ones: a study out of MIT, a study out of Oxford Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, most recently by Johns Hopkins University. A statistically insignificant 0.2% reduction in COVID deaths. And that doesn't even take into account the unintended consequences of lockdowns that leads to more death and despair. One of the earliest refuted government claims was this notion of asymptomatic spread. This claim was the basis for telling everyone to mask up. Yet more than 2 months later, even the politicized World Health Organization said that from the data they had, they believed that asymptomatic spread is very rare. But then what happened? Dr. Maria's email box blew up. She got yelled at by the masked tyrants. And contrary to false media headlines, essentially all she said the next day was to acknowledge that there are these models that claim as much as 40% of cases spread asymptomatically. But it was obvious that the WHO doesn't believe these models. Models do not always predict the future. Models are, in fact, the lowest form of scientific evidence. Contact tracing studies are the higher standard. So why did the government side with inferior models instead of the gold standard contact tracing studies? This has been the constant theme with government, to constantly err on the side of caution and hysteria. And anyone who disagrees or challenges their opinion is a fringe conspiracy theorist who must be smeared and silenced. On April 3rd, 2020, the CDC started telling people to wear masks. Yet 6 months later, the CDC quietly mentioned in this report that you'll never hear about because the media skipped talking about it, that they only knew of one randomized controlled trial that looked into the efficacy of cloth masks, and the results do not favor cloth masks. Of course, this isn't the only study. There's at least 98 studies into the efficacy of wearing masks to stop respiratory viruses. Link in description. It wasn't until late 2021 that the establishment media and the technocrats finally admitted what those right-wing conspiracy news sites like Daily Wire and Town Hall had been saying all along. So now that we all agree that cloth masks don't work, the government and their mockingbird media are now telling you that the settled science has been resettled again, that N95 masks work, and anyone who says anything to the contrary is spreading medical misinformation. Never mind that there is no real-world control group study on the general public wearing N95 masks to fight COVID. Does not exist. The closest thing we have where we can maybe extrapolate what might happen was a large study of outpatient healthcare workers. They had some wearing N95 masks and some wearing medical masks, surgical masks, which Dr. Ted Newell, link in description, did a real-world video demonstration showing how aerosol particles go through and around surgical masks. But so there was no significant difference in flu cases, which spread through airborne respiratory particles just like COVID. And again, these were trained healthcare workers. The general public doesn't wear masks properly. They're not fitted properly. They're constantly touching their masks. They don't change them out after each exposure to different people, etc. Another example where we might extrapolate the effectiveness of N95 masks is Austria. They had 2 huge outbreaks after mandating N95 masks in stores and public transportation. The bottom line is we know that wearing a mask outside of healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. It's just a reflexive reaction to anxiety over the pandemic.